That lime green HOA, Karen screamed I'd pay for my $80,000 fence. But when she came for my ranch, my stallion, Blaze sent her splashing into the horse trough. My blood's hotter than a Montana forge, and I'm ready to fight. I'm Jake Harlan, a 55-year-old ex-tech engineer turned rancher. And this is my stand against Bonnie Whitaker, the meanest HOA tyrant in Big Sky country. She tried to steal my 100-acre horse ranch with fake fines, vandalism, and a loaded 45, but this cowboy don't bend and my horse don't miss. Welcome to HOA Karen Files, where we bury bullies and cheer the fighters. Hit that subscribe button, slam that bell, and saddle up for a tale of grit, vengeance, and a stallion's justice that'll leave you hollering. 8 months ago, I traded Silicon Valley's buzz for Montana's quiet. 100 acres of paradise called Rolling Thunder Ranch, bought with $1.8 million of my savings. After 20 years writing code for a tech giant, debugging servers, and dodging corporate knives, I wanted dirt, horses, and freedom. My spread was a dream. Green pastures, a cedar barn, and 30 quarter horses grazing under a sky wider than my old cubicle. But there was a catch. Pine Hollow Estates, an elite community with an HOA nastier than a stepped-on rattler. The name Pine Hollow sounded fancy, like a country club for folks with too much money and not enough sense. I should have known it was trouble. I'm Jake, a fella who'd rather fix a bug than fight a clipboard Karen, but Bonnie Whitaker pushed me into a war that'd shake this valley. It started with a fence, not some rickety wire job, $80,000 of hand-carved cedar, 7 feet tall, built to keep my horses safe and my landmine. I'd studied Pine Hollow's HOA bylaws like they were a software manual. Article 12, Section 3. Perimeter fences may not exceed 8 feet. My fence was 7 feet, legal as a Montana sunrise. I hired a crew, led by Miguel Torres, my ranch hand. Miguel's a good man, 40 from Guatemala, working 2 jobs to support his kids back home. He'd warned me about Bonnie. "Senor Jake," he said, his voice low, "that lady's loca. She fined the Garcias $200 for a bluebird house." I laughed it off, thinking he was spinning tales. I'd learned the hard way. Day 1 of construction, I stood in my pasture, watching those cedar posts rise, my chest swelling with pride. My lead mare, Star, snorted, her colt, Lightning, prancing nearby. Miguel directed the crew, his boots kicking dust, his whistle sharp. Then she rolled in. Bonnie Whitaker, HOA president, 50 years old, 5'3", of pure venom and a lime green blazer that could blind a hawk. Her bleached blonde hair was piled high, her eyes gleaming with that Karen glare that says, "I'm the law." Ayura, she clutched a clipboard like it was a 6-shooter, marching across my land, her heels sinking in the dirt. "What in tarnation is this?" she barked, pointing at my fence. I climbed down from my ladder, wiping sweat on my jeans. "Morning, ma'am. Jake Harlan, building a fence for my horses." Her lips curled like she'd smelled sour hay. "I'm Bonnie Whitaker, HOA president, and this cedar monstrosity violates Regulation 89. I raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, I read the bylaws. Article 12 allows 8-foot fences. This is 7. She jabbed her pen at the clipboard, her green nails flashing. "That rule's outdated, Mr. Harlan. I'm revising it next meeting to 5 feet for aesthetic harmony." I kept my cool, my voice steady as a rock. "With respect, Mrs. Whitaker, you can't fine me for a rule that ain't real yet." Her eyes narrowed to slits, her voice dropping low. "I've run Pine Hollow for 8 years. I decide what's harmonious. This fence is a blight on our community." I glanced at my cedar masterpiece, each post carved like art, then back at her. "It's my land, my money, and my right." She snapped her clipboard shut, her voice ice cold. "You'll regret this, Harlan." She whipped out her phone, snapping photos of my fence from every angle, muttering about violations and standards. She even pulled a tape measure from her purse, measuring the height with a sneer, scribbling notes like a detective. Miguel whistled low as she stormed off. "Senor, you just kicked a hornet's nest." I shrugged, but my gut twisted. This was gonna get ugly. That night, I did what I do best. Dig. Back in tech, I tracked bugs through a million lines of code, and now I hunted Bonnie's dirt. Online, I found Pine Hollow's records. Bonnie had changed the bylaws 15 times in 8 years. 4 families had bolted after violations. The Lopez's got fined for a non-compliant mailbox, the Wilsons for unauthorized roses, the Chens for their kids' drum practice. I pulled county records and hit gold. Every sold property was bought by an LLC, Big Sky Ventures, within days. Too neat for chance. I saved every email, every public file, my laptop glowing till 3 a.m. My desk looked like a hacker's lair, and I knew Bonnie wasn't just a Karen. She was playing a bigger game. Next morning, a certified letter landed in my mailbox like a brick. Emergency HOA meeting Saturday. Topic: Fence Height Amendment. Attached was a $500 fine for unapproved construction. I laughed, but it was grim. Bonnie was loading her guns. I called Sarah Klein, a property lawyer I'd met at the feed store. She was 35, sharp as a spur, with a fire for taking down HOA tyrants. "Jake," she said, her voice firm, "this is war. Bring your files." I printed my research, my evidence stacked thicker than a hay bale. Saturday, the Pine Hollow Community Center felt like a courtroom crossed with a viper's nest. Bonnie sat at a mahogany table, her lime green blazer swapped for a teal one, her goons, HOA board members, flanking her like a posse. 20 homeowners filled the seats, whispering. Sarah sat beside me, her briefcase packed with my files. Miguel came too, his eyes darting like a spooked Colt. Bonnie opened with a smile sweeter than poison. "Thank you for attending this urgent meeting. We're here to protect Pine Hollow's elegance." She glared at me, her laser pointer dancing on a PowerPoint showing cookie-cutter suburbs, not Montana ranches. "Certain residents are defying our standards with unsightly structures," she said, clicking to a slide of my fence, labeled visual pollution. She pushed a 5-foot fence limit to preserve property values. Sarah stood, her voice cutting like a knife. "Point of order, Madam President. My client's fence complies with Article 12. Retroactive changes violate Montana property law." Bonnie's smile didn't budge, but her knuckles whitened on her pointer. "Mr. Harlan could comply voluntarily to show community spirit." I stood, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. "Mrs. Whitaker, you've changed the bylaws 15 times, targeting folks like the Lopez's and Wilsons. I've got records." I held up my file, flashing satellite images of Bonnie's own violations. A 10-foot gazebo, unapproved, sitting pretty in her yard. The room buzzed like a kicked hive. Old man Carter yelled, "You fined me $300 for my flagpole." Mrs. Lee chimed in, "My porch light was too yellow." Bonnie banged her gavel, her voice shrill. "Order, we're voting on the amendment." The vote was razor close, 9-8, keeping the 8-foot rule. Bonnie's face twisted like she'd swallowed barbed wire. As we left, I overheard her on her phone, her voice low. "The vote failed, but I've got plans. He's done." Sarah grabbed my arm, her eyes hard. "Jake, she's coming for you. Stay sharp." 3 days later, I woke to my fence defaced, red spray paint scrawling, "Tear it down," across 30 feet of cedar. My heart sank, my hands clenching. I checked my security cameras. A silver Cadillac SUV, Bonnie's, cruised by at 3:04 a.m., slow as a snake. The driver's window was down, but the footage didn't catch her face. I saved it to 3 drives in the cloud, my tech instincts kicking in. I called Sheriff Tom Reed, a grizzled vet with a face like weathered leather. He watched the footage at my cabin, sipping my coffee. "It's her car, Jake, but no clear shot of her painting. I'll talk to her, but she's slipperier than a greased pig." Miguel helped me scrub the paint, his voice low. "Senor, she tried to evict the Chens for their kids' drum practice. Called it noise pollution." I nodded, my jaw tight. Why's everyone so scared of her? Miguel sighed, his eyes dark. "Her brother's a county judge. She knows everyone's secrets." I rigged more cameras, 8 total, covering every inch of my land, plus motion sensors and a steel gate. My ranch was a fortress, but my gut said Bonnie was just warming up. That afternoon, I rode Blaze, my 1,200-pound black stallion, through my pasture, clearing my head. Blaze was a warrior, 17 hands, muscles like steel, eyes that saw through you. I'd bought him from a Wyoming breeder, trained him to guard my herd like a dog. As we trotted past my north fence, I spotted something odd. Surveyor stakes, fresh, dated a week ago, hidden in the sagebrush. No one had my permission to measure my land. I photographed them, my mind racing. Back at my cabin, I dug deeper, pulling records on Big Sky Ventures. The LLC had bought 5 Pine Hollow properties, all linked to a mining outfit, Granite Peak Resources. My ranch sat on a vein of rare minerals, $150 million worth, according to old surveys. Bonnie wasn't just a Karen, she was a pawn in a land grab, and my fence was in their way. I called Sarah, my voice low. Bonnie's tied to a mining scheme. Big Sky Ventures, Granite Peak. They want my land. Sarah whistled. That's big, Jake. Send me everything. We'll build a case, but watch your back. That night, I locked my files in a safe, my Winchester by my bed. Blaze snorted outside, his hooves pawing the dirt. I whispered to the dark, we're in deep, partner. Bonnie's next move would be uglier, and I was ready, or so I thought. Bonnie Whitaker's goons poisoned my stream and set wild Mustangs loose on my ranch. But my stallion Blaze tore through her $40,000 tulip garden like a tornado, and I'm just getting started. My blood's boiling hotter than a Montana wildfire, and this cowboy ain't backing down. I'm Jake Harlan, 55, ex-tech engineer turned rancher, fighting the meanest HOA Karen in Big Sky country. Bonnie tried to steal my 100-acre Rolling Thunder Ranch with fake fines, vandalism, and a land grab scheme bigger than the Rockies. But I've got grit, my horse Blaze has hooves of justice, and we're taking this fight to the wire last time. Bonnie Whitaker, Pine Hollow's lime green HOA dictator, came for my $80,000 cedar fence, claiming it violated her made-up rules. I stood my ground, backed by the bylaws, and won a razor-close HOA vote to keep my 7-foot fence legal. But Bonnie didn't quit. She spray-painted "Tear It Down" across my cedar, her Cadillac caught on my cameras at 3 a.m. I dug deeper, finding her tied to Big Sky Ventures, an LLC buying up Pine Hollow properties for Granite Peak Resources, eyeing a $150 million mineral vein under my ranch. Surveyor stakes on my land proved they wanted my 100 acres bad. Now Bonnie's up in the ante, and this war is about to get dirtier than a stampede. Saddle up, because it's going to be a wild ride. 3 days after Bonnie's vandalism, I was riding Blaze, my 122 to 100-pound black stallion, checking my north pasture. Blaze is a beast, 17 hands, muscles like iron, eyes that'd stare down a grizzly. I'd trained him to guard my 30-quarter horses like a wolfhound, and he never missed a threat. As we trotted past the surveyor stakes I'd found, fresh, unmarked, sneaking onto my land, I spotted tire tracks in the sagebrush. Not mine. I dismounted, my boots crunching dirt, and followed them to a ditch. There, half hidden, was a steel drum, unmarked, with a faint oil sheen leaking into my stream. My heart sank. This wasn't just vandalism, it was sabotage. I snapped photos, my hands shaken, and called Sheriff Tom Reed. Tom rolled up in his cruiser, his face weathered as old leather. Jake, this is bad. Looks like industrial oil. Could kill your horses if they drink downstream. I nodded, my jaw tight. Bonnie's playing dirty, Tom. My camera's caught her SUV before. This is her. He sighed, rubbing his neck. I'll test the oil, but without a clear link, she'll dodge it. Her brother's a county judge, Jake. She's got pull. I kicked a rock, my voice low. Then I'll find the link. Back at my cabin, I rigged a water filter for my stream, my hands black with grease. Miguel Torres, my ranch hand, helped, his face grim. Senor Jake, Bonnie tried to find the leads for their kid's skateboard ramp. Called it structural blight. She don't stop. I nodded, my eyes on the horizon. She's after more than fines, Miguel. Those stakes mean they want my land. That night, I pored over county records, my laptop glowing. Big Sky Ventures had bought 6 Pine Hollow properties, all tied to Granite Peak, a mining outfit. My ranch sat on a rare earth mineral vein, cerium, neodymium, worth $150 million for tech batteries. My fence blocked their planned access road. Bonnie wasn't just a Karen, she was a hired gun. Next morning, trouble doubled. A black van rolled up, Montana land compliance painted on the side. Two suits stepped out, led by a weasel-faced fella, Carl Vance, flashing a badge that looked like it came from a cereal box. Mr. Harlan, we're here for an environmental audit. Complaints about horse waste and stream pollution. I scanned their papers. Fancy letterhead, but the font was blurry, like a cheap Photoshop job. My tech brain pinged. Who sent you? I asked, my voice flat. Carl smirked, his eyes darting. Anonymous tip. I crossed my arms. Let me guess. Bonnie Whitaker? His smirk faded, but he shrugged. Clients confidential. They spent 4 hours poking my ranch, taking soil samples, snapping photos, lingering near my north fence where those stakes sat. Blaze watched him, his ears pinned, his tail swishing like a whip. My lead mare, Star, snorted, her Colt, Lightning, skittering behind her. The suit's report hit like a sledgehammer. $4,000 in fines for excessive manure, improper drainage, and potential groundwater contamination. I laughed, my blood boiling. My systems are county-approved, Vance. This is bull. He handed me a form, his voice oily. Appeal if you want. Fines stack daily. Miguel whispered as they left. Senor, that's Bonnie's cousin, Carl. I saw him at her 4th of July bash. I nodded, my fist clenching. She's building a noose, Miguel. I called Sarah Klein, my lawyer, her voice crackling through my phone. Jake, this is fraud. Send me the report. We'll counter-sue, but Bonnie's got connections. Be careful. I locked the report in my safe, my Winchester leaning nearby. Blaze pawed the dirt outside, his snort echoing. This was war, and Bonnie was loading the cannons. 2 nights later, hell broke loose. I woke to Blaze's scream, high, wild, like a battle cry. My heart pounded as I grabbed my flashlight and boots, running to the corral. My horses were in chaos, 30-quarter horses rearing, galloping, their eyes white with panic. In the moonlight, I saw why. A herd of scruffy Mustangs, 20 strong, had crashed through my south fence, charging my pasture like a storm. These weren't mine, wild, rangy, their manes matted. Someone had cut my fence wire, and boot prints led to tire tracks. I saddled Blaze, his muscles quivering, and rode hard, yelling to Miguel, Call Tom, get the crew. Blaze tore through the dark, his hooves thundering as we herded my horses to safety. The Mustangs scattered, trampling my graze, one kick in a water trough to splinters. By dawn, we'd penned my herd, but the damage was done. $10,000 in fences, graze, and equipment. My cameras caught a pickup, unmarked but with a Big Sky Ventures sticker, idling nearby at 2 a.m. I saved the footage, my jaw tight. Bonnie had unleashed a stampede to break me. Sheriff Tom arrived, his cruiser kicking dust. Jake, this is deliberate. Those Mustangs were driven here. Someone opened a BLM gate 10 miles out. I showed him the footage, my voice hard. Big Sky's behind this, Tom. Bonnie's their front. He nodded, his eyes narrow. I'll trace the truck, but Bonnie's brother will bury this unless we've got ironclad proof. I spat in the dirt. Then I'll get it. Miguel and I spent the day fixing fences. My hands blistered, my mind racing. Senor, Miguel said, hammering a post. Bonnie's done this before. The Wilsons left after their barn was vandalized. Same boot prints. I nodded, my resolve hardening. She's trying to scare me off, Miguel. Ain't happening. That night, I hacked deeper into Big Sky's records, using old tech tricks. I found a bombshell. Granite Peak had filed mineral claims under Pine Hollow, dating back 2 years. Bonnie's brother, Judge Warren Whitaker, had fast-tracked their permits. My ranch was the key. Their access road needed my north pasture. I emailed Sarah, my fingers flying. We've got him, Sarah. Fraud, conspiracy, the works. She replied, file it, Jake, but they'll hit back hard. Stay armed. Then Blaze struck. 1 midnight, I was checking my cameras when Blaze snorted, his ears pinned. I grabbed my flashlight and saw a coyote stalking Lightning, Star's Colt. Blaze charged, his hooves a war drum, crashing through a gate into Bonnie's land. I ran after him yelling, but it was too late. Blaze hit Bonnie's $40,000 tulip garden, her prize-winning Dutch golden tulips, bragged about at every HOA meeting. Petals flew like confetti, trellises snapped, a marble fountain tipped into the dirt. Blaze tore through it like a twister, his mane wild, a yellow tulip dangling from his mouth. I caught him, my breath heaving, his eyes innocent as a foal's. "Blaze, you're gonna start a damn war," I groaned, trying to salvage the wreckage. By dawn, I dragged the fountain upright, but the garden was a battlefield. I knew Bonnie'd come gunning. At 6 a.m., she was at my door, her teal blazer rumpled, her face purple with rage. "Your devil horse destroyed my legacy," she screamed, shoving her phone in my face, photos showing tulip carnage. "Those were Dutch Goldens worth $40,000. You'll pay, Harlan." Neighbors gathered. Carter, Mrs. Lee, the Chens, drawn by her shrieks. Miguel stood by me, his eyes wary. I kept my voice level. "Blaze chased a coyote, Bonnie. Someone tampered with my gate. The same someone dumping oil in my stream." Her eyes flickered, but she hissed, "Lies, you're a menace." She waved a folder, itemized damages like she'd been waiting for this. Mrs. Chen yelled, "What about your fines, Bonnie? My son's drums ain't a crime." Carter chimed in, "You charged me for my flagpole." Bonnie spun, her voice venom. "This man's ruining Pine Hollow. You'll all regret backing him." She stormed off, but I saw fear in her eyes. She was losing control. The next day, fines hit my mailbox. $6,000 for fence violations, $3,000 for livestock damage. I burned them in my fire pit, my hands steady. Then Bonnie's goons struck again. One night, my cameras caught two figures dumping more oil in my stream, 50 gallons, enough to choke my herd. I saddled Blaze and chased their truck, a beat-up Ford with Big Sky's logo, my Winchester slung across my back. The chase hit 60 mep on dirt roads, Blaze's hooves pounding, my heart racing. They ditched the truck at an empty lot, piled with surveyor stakes and Granite Peak maps. I photographed it all, my breath ragged. Back home, I found a note on my gate. "Sell or burn, Harlan." My blood ran cold, but my resolve burned hotter. I called a secret meeting at my barn. Carter, Mrs. Lee, the Chens, and 10 others. I showed them my evidence, footage, records, the note. "Bonnie's not just a Karen," I said, my voice low. "She's fronting for Granite Peak, stealing our land for $150 million in minerals." Carter whistled, his eyes wide. "She find my flagpole to push me out?" Mrs. Lee nodded, her voice hard. "My porch light was a lie. She's evil." The Chens agreed to join a lawsuit, and Carter rallied the rest. "We're with you, Jake," he said, his hand on my shoulder. "This is Montana. We fight." I nodded, my heart swelling. The community was waking up. But Bonnie wasn't done. One dawn, her goon Carl showed up with a cease and desist order, claiming my ranch was non-compliant with new HOA rules. I tore it up, my voice ice. "Get off my land, Carl, or Blaze will show you the gate." He smirked, but his eyes darted to Blaze, pawing the dirt. "You're making enemies, Harlan," he said, backing off. That night, I found Bonnie's leverage files, hacked from her HOA server, thanks to my tech days. Dossiers on every neighbor. Carter's old DUI, Mrs. Lee's tax issues, the Chen's son's truancy. She'd been blackmailing Pine Hollow for years. I saved it all, my hands shaking. Bonnie was a spider, and I was in her web. As I sat on my porch, Blaze grazing nearby, a black SUV idled at my gate, Bonnie's. It sat for 10 minutes, then peeled out. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. "Drop it, Harlan, or your ranch burns." I showed it to Sarah, who was building our case. "They're scared, Jake," she said. "You're close." I nodded, my Winchester close. Blaze snorted, his eyes locked on the horizon. Bonnie was coming for blood, and I was ready. That black SUV idling at my gate, Bonnie Whitaker's, peeled out into the Montana dark, leaving a chill colder than a winter wind. Her threat still burned in my mind. "Drop it, Harlan, or your ranch burns." I'm Jake Harlan, 55, ex-tech engineer turned rancher, and I've been fighting this lime green HOA Karen for my 100-acre Rolling Thunder ranch. She's hit me with fake fines, poisoned my stream, and loosed wild Mustangs on my land, all to steal it for a $150 million mineral vein. My stallion Blaze tore through her $40,000 tulip garden, and I've got her leverage files. Blackmail on every neighbor. Now Bonnie's coming for blood, but this cowboy's got grit, and Blaze has got hooves of justice. The morning sun was barely peeking over the Rockies when I heard Blaze snort, his hooves stomping the corral like a war drum. My gut screamed trouble. I checked my cameras. Nothing but sagebrush shadows. But at 7 a.m., Bonnie stormed across my pasture, her teal blazer blazing like a neon cactus. 4 goons trailing her, including that weasel Carl Vance. In her hand, a Colt 45 gleamed, its barrel catching the light like a viper's fang. Neighbors, Old Man Carter, Mrs. Lee, the Chens, froze on their porches, eyes wide as saucers. Miguel Torres, my ranch hand, slipped behind the barn, his phone to his ear, whispering to 911. Bonnie's voice cut the air, shrill as a banshee. "You've pushed me too far, Harlan. Your fence, your devil horse, your snooping, it's over." I stepped off my porch, hands raised, my voice steady as a Montana boulder. "Bonnie, put the gun down. You're done." Her green nails shook on the trigger, her eyes wilder than a cornered coyote. "I built Pine Hollow. You and your tech tricks are ruining my legacy." She ranted about her ex-husband, her ungrateful kids, her voice cracking like dry leather. "You dug up my files, Harlan? You think you're smart? I'm the law here." I locked eyes, my heart pounding but my words sharp. "You're stealing our land for Granite Peak, Bonnie. I've got your emails, your bank records, your brother's permits." Her face went purple, veins popping. "You know nothing." She raised the 45, aiming square at my chest, her finger tightening. Time froze. The guns glint, the winds howl, my horses stirring in the corral, Star whinnying, her Colt lightning skittering. Then Blaze charged. My 1,200-pound black stallion exploded from the corral, his mane a midnight storm, hooves thundering like a buffalo stampede. Bonnie, blind with rage, never saw him coming. Blaze lowered his shoulder, hitting her midsection with the force of a runaway train. She flew 12 feet, her teal blazer flapping like a busted parachute, the Colt spinning into the dirt. Her scream died as she crashed into my horse trough with a splash that'd make Old Faithful jealous. Water and green algae erupting like a volcano. She surfaced, gasping, her blonde hair a soggy wreck, slime dripping from her blazer, looking like she'd been dunked in a swamp. Miguel dove, snatching the gun with reflexes that'd shame a rodeo champ, holding it clear of the trigger. Blaze snorted, shaking his mane, his eyes blazing with "job done." The neighbors snapped out of their trance and laughter roared across the valley. Carter wheezed. "She's a drowned skunk in a slime suit." Mrs. Lee cackled. "That's for my porch light, Bonnie." Bonnie flailed, screaming, "This is assault. I'll sue every last one of you." She tried standing, slipped on the trough's mossy bottom, and splashed face first, triggering a fresh wave of hoots. Sheriff Tom Reed's cruiser screeched up, his dash cam catching the whole circus. He stepped out, boots crunching, a grin tugging his weathered face. "Bonnie Whitaker, you're under arrest. Assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, illegal firearm." He cuffed her as she sputtered, water pouring off her like a busted dam. "I'm the HOA president. My brother's a judge." Tom shook his head, his voice dry. "Warren's in cuffs too, Bonnie. Game over." Her goons bolted, but Deputy Sarah Chen nabbed Carl at the gate, his weasel face pale as milk. The trough rippled as Bonnie was dragged away, her teal blazer now a muddy mess, her empire crumbling faster than a bad bluff. Bonnie's arrest lit Pine Hollow like a prairie fire. My footage, her gun, Blaze's charge, her goons' oil dumps, was a dynamite stick. I handed my drives to Tom, who called the FBI. By noon, black SUVs rolled in, kicking dust like a posse. Special Agent Laura Martinez, A steel-eyed woman, sharper than a barbed wire fence, set up in my kitchen. "Harlan," she said, spreading my files, "you've busted a viper's nest. Big Sky Ventures is Granite Peak Resources' front, and they've been gutting Montana towns for years." She laid out maps, wiretaps, and bank records. Granite Peak had raised 3 communities, Willow Creek, Pine Valley, Elk Ridge, for $150 million in rare earth minerals under Pine Hollow. My ranch was their golden ticket, blocking their mining road. Bonnie, their enforcer, pocketed $400,000 in kickbacks. Her brother, Judge Warren Whitaker, greasing permits. "Your leverage files," Laura said, "prove she blackmailed half the county." I leaned back, my coffee cold. "What's the play, Agent?" Her eyes gleamed. "We're taking them down. You'll testify." I nodded, my jaw tight. Bonnie was a spider, but I'd torn her web. The FBI turned Pine Hollow upside down. Agents raided Bonnie's mansion, hauling out computers and a hidden safe. Behind a false wall, they found her leverage files, cabinets stuffed with dirt. Carter's 20-year-old DUI, Mrs. Lee's tax liens, the Chen's son school fights. A secret server held footage from cameras she'd hidden around Pine Hollow, spying on mailboxes, porches, even kids' bikes. "She's got my bankruptcy," Carter muttered, flipping through his file. Mrs. Lee found photos of her daughter's graduation, snapped without consent. The Chens uncovered Bonnie's threats to report their son as a delinquent. Bonnie's journal was a horror show, rambling rants about her ex-husband, her kids, and Pine Hollow. "They're plotting against me," she wrote. "Like my family, smiling while they stab. I'll own them all." Dr. Ellen Hayes, our vet, read it and sighed. Narcissist with a martyr complex, she thought she was saving Pine Hollow while crushing it. The FBI traced Bonnie's accounts, $400,000 stashed offshore, plus emails with Granite Peak execs planning Operation Landslide to clear Pine Hollow. Carl, her goon, flipped like a pancake, admitting Bonnie rigged HOA elections and framed neighbors. Warren was arrested, his office raided for Granite Peak bribes. Pine Hollow exploded. We packed the community center, 50 homeowners shoulder to shoulder. Carter stood, his voice roaring. "Bonnie fined my flagpole to break me." Mrs. Lee slammed her fist. "She threatened my daughter's college fund over a damn light." The Chens shared Bonnie's blackmail, and the room ignited. Old feuds dissolved as neighbors united. We formed a legal action group, Sarah Klein at the helm. Someone printed shirts with Blaze's face and Hooves of Justice, selling like hotcakes at the feed store. Some retirees fretted. Mr. Dawson whined, "This'll kill our property values." Carter snapped, "You want to live on a strip mine, Dawson? They were going to gut us." Agent Martinez took the floor, her voice like steel. "Granite Peak's done this to 3 towns. Willow Creek's empty, Pine Valley's bulldozed. Bonnie staged vandalism, fake violations, even break-ins to scare folks out." She played a wiretap, Bonnie cackling with Granite Peak suits. "These fools sell cheap when you rattle them." Mrs. Lee sobbed, her voice hard. "My light was a lie to break us." The room turned from fear to fury. We weren't pawns no more. The trial hit Billings like a Montana blizzard, 6 months after Bonnie's trough dunk. Media trucks choked the courthouse, satellite dishes sprouting like sagebrush. The stallion showdown trended, though I kept saying, "Blaze, not Rambo." Protesters waved signs, "HOAs ain't the law." A kid held a cardboard Blaze and a cowboy hat, hoof raised. I sat in the front row with Miguel, Sarah, Carter, and half of Pine Hollow. Bonnie shuffled in, orange jumpsuit replacing her teal blazer, her eyes hollow but flashing venom when they met mine. Carl sat separate, sweaty, his plea deal inked. Assistant U.S. Attorney Mark Torres laid out the case like a sharpshooter. 10 counts of fraud, 5 of extortion, conspiracy, illegal firearm, assault. Bank records showed Bonnie's $400,000 kickbacks. Emails proved she targeted my ranch for Granite Peaks Road. Her leverage files exposed years of blackmail. Whitaker turned Pine Hollow into a racket, Torres thundered, stealing homes for corporate greed. My testimony lit the room. I played footage of Blaze's charge. Jurors hid grins as Bonnie splashed. "She shot at me," I said, voice steady. "Blaze saved my life." Miguel spoke of Bonnie's threats, Mrs. Lee of her daughter's fear, Carter of his flagpole. Carl's confession buried her. Bonnie ran Pine Hollow like a cartel. Granite Peak paid her to clear Harlan's land. The gun was her break-in. He spilled Granite Peak's schemes in 5 states, triggering FBI raids from Nevada to Idaho. Bonnie's defense pushed a troubled woman sob story, their shrink blabbing about her divorce-fueled control issues. Torres shredded him. Control issues don't justify fraud, guns, or blackmail. The jury took 2 hours, guilty on all counts. At sentencing, Bonnie whispered, "I wanted order. You don't get the burden of leading." Judge Clara Evans stared her down. "You betrayed your neighbors, enriched yourself, and shot at a man. Leadership serves, not enslaves." Bonnie got 14 years, no parole for 10. Carl drew 7. Granite Peak's execs faced indictments. Their $150 million dream dead. Pine Hollow roared, beers clinking at the saloon. We rebuilt quick. The HOA was scrapped, reborn with Carter as president. Term limits ironclad. We killed Bonnie's rules. No more fines for flagpoles or lights. The state made Pine Hollow a geological preserve, blocking mining for good. Green groups hailed it as a land win. With Granite Peak's settlement, I turned Rolling Thunder into Thunder Haven, a therapy ranch for kids with disabilities. Blaze, gentle with the kids, let him braid his mane, a hero in their eyes. Miguel brought his family from Guatemala, his kids riding Colts, his grin wider than the valley. Sheriff Tom retired, volunteering at Thunder Haven, spinning yarns about Blaze the Outlaw Buster. At our first community festival, we unveiled a plaque in the town square. To Pine Hollow united against tyranny, with a nod to a stallion's heart. The Chens grilled tacos, Mrs. Lee hung lanterns, Carter flew his flag. My phone buzzed. A Hollywood suit, pitching Blaze's story. "Chris Hemsworth for you, maybe a CGI horse." I eyed Blaze chewing Mrs. Lee's daisies. "Hollywood, buddy?" He snorted, flicking his tail. "Some things stay wild." As the sun sank, painting the Montana sky orange and purple, I stood with Miguel, watching kids laugh, neighbors dance. Bonnie was wrong. Standards ain't control. They're community, standing tall, fighting for right. This is Montana. We guard our land, shield our own, and let stallions settle scores. If a Karen's on your trail, read the rules, save the proof, and maybe get a horse. Justice might charge in on 4 hooves. This is HOA Karen Files. Subscribe, hit that bell, and share your HOA battles. Let's keep these tyrants running.